Before we start, let me ask you something. What would you do if one night the police stopped you, but the police weren't actually police? What would you do if they took you, took your family, and forced you to help them steal $100 million? Tonight, you're not watching a story. You're stepping into the longest, coldest night in British history. A night where criminals dressed like officers. A night where a father had to choose between his family and the law. A night where a cash depot filled with millions was emptied without a single bullet. This is the heist that made Britain stop breathing. And trust me, the deeper you go, the worse it gets.
Our story begins months before the robbery. Not on the night of the crime, but on an ordinary day in Kent, England. The people who would later become victims had no idea they were being watched. For weeks, maybe months, every routine was studied, every movement recorded. And by the time the plan was executed, every detail had already been written. In February 2006, Kent, England, a gang of 7 men carried out what would later be described as the largest cash robbery in British history. Their target was a building that looked ordinary from the outside. No signs, no logos, no indication of importance. But behind tall fences, reinforced electronic gates, motion sensors, alarms, and constant CCTV surveillance. This building held an unimaginable amount of money. This was the Securitas cash depot. At any given moment, the depot could contain 200 to 250 million pounds in cash. That's nearly £250 million. Day and night, money flowed through this place. Cash collected from shops, businesses, and institutions across the region was counted, sorted, sealed in color-coded bags, and stored in massive cages inside a fortified vault. Employees worked in shifts 24 hours a day. Night shifts ran from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. Security was strict. To enter the depot, an employee needed an electronic access card for the outer gate, then approval from the security control room, identity verification through cameras. It was designed to be nearly impossible to breach. Nearly. At 1 a.m. on February 22, 2006, a car stopped at the outer gate of the depot. 2 men stepped out. One was Colin Dixon, the depot's manager. The other appeared to be a British police officer, wearing a high-visibility yellow jacket. CCTV footage shows Dixon using his access card to open the outer gate. He and the officer then approached the inner entrance. Dixon spoke into the intercom and told the security officer inside, "There's an emergency." The door was opened. Moments later, inside the security room, the police officer pulled out a gun. He forced the security guard to the ground and restrained him. Minutes later, a large truck arrived outside. Another car followed. Dixon opened the outer gate remotely. Masked men in black clothing exited the vehicles. They wore ski masks, body armor, and carried pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles. They entered the building. The heist had begun.
So seized all the staff, they herd them into one room, make them lie on their fronts, and then start to restrain them with cable ties. And some of these people are bound quite tightly. Put yourself in that position, you are bound, you are in a place that has a lot of money in it, you know what's in that, you have these people committing what is believed to be the...
Inside the depot, employees were still working, unaware of what was happening. One worker later recalled seeing Dixon approach with a police officer and assuming it was a routine security drill. That illusion shattered when Dixon quietly said, "I'm sorry, my friend." The masked man raised his weapon. One by one, employees were restrained using heavy-duty cable ties. The gang knew exactly where the alarm buttons were. They warned the staff, "Press anything, and someone gets hurt." Despite the weapons, the robbers were calm, professional, disciplined. Their leader, a large, athletic man armed with an AK-style rifle, clearly controlled the operation. He called employees by name, checked attendance lists, made sure no one was hiding. He told them, "We're not here to hurt anyone. This money isn't yours. Your lives are worth more than it." The cash was stored in a massive vault secured by 2 keys. Colin Dixon retrieved both. The vault doors opened. Inside were towering metal cages filled with color-coded cash bags. Each cage weighed tons. The gang planned to load as much as possible onto the truck. They struggled with the lifting equipment at first. A restrained employee offered to help, wanting the nightmare to end as quickly as possible. He operated the forklift. As he loaded the first cage into the truck, he noticed something shocking. Inside the truck were a woman and a small child. He said nothing. Minutes later, the employee was restrained again.
Most robberies last a matter of minutes. This was an hour and a quarter.
As time passed, employees complained about the tight restraints. Unexpectedly, the leader ordered the ties loosened. Then the gang had a better idea. They locked the staff inside empty cash cages. No restraints, just locked doors. Then they brought in the woman and the child. And finally, Colin Dixon himself. When the truck was full, the leader bowed sarcastically and said, "Thank you for your cooperation." At 2:45 a.m., the gang left. The entire robbery had taken 1 hour and 25 minutes. Once the gates stopped making noise, the employees knew the robbers were gone. A small opening allowed the child to escape a cage. He retrieved the keys. Everyone was freed. Some wanted to trigger the alarm immediately. Dixon stopped them. "Give them time to get away." Reluctantly, they waited. 30 minutes later, police were finally contacted. At first, even emergency operators struggled to understand what had happened. Millions? One asked. Yes, millions. When police arrived and saw the vault, they realized this was far beyond a normal robbery. Detectives were alerted. The lead investigator, Detective Andy Nickel, would soon learn the truth. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a perfectly planned operation. And it all started the day before. To understand how the biggest cash heist in British history was pulled off, you can't start on the night of the crime. You have to go back 24 hours earlier, to a quiet road in Kent. Colin Dixon, the manager of the Securitas cash depot, was driving home, just like any other night. But this night was different. Flashing blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror, a police car. He pulled over. 2 men in police uniforms approached his window. They told him there were issues with his vehicle. Standard procedure, nothing to worry about. Then they handcuffed him. One of them pulled a gun. "We're not police." Dixon was taken to a remote farmhouse. His world had just collapsed, but the nightmare was only beginning. Later that evening, the same men visited his home. They told his wife there had been an accident. She and her young son were taken. At the farmhouse, Dixon saw them, his family, hostages. The message was clear: cooperate, or they die. The gang showed Dixon detailed blueprints of the depot. They already knew almost everything. He filled in the rest, for his family's life. As dawn broke over Kent, investigators began to understand a terrifying truth. This robbery didn't begin at 1 a.m. It began months earlier. The gang hadn't just studied the building. They had studied people. Securitas and their insurers offered a £2 million reward, the the largest reward ever offered in the UK at that time. Within 24 hours, police began finding the getaway vehicles. A van was discovered at a pub in Hucking. Inside, they found a balaclava, a bulletproof vest, a submachine gun, and over £1.3 million in stolen banknotes. More vehicles were found near Leeds Castle. Discarded metal cages and equipment were located at a farm near Detling. Police raided homes across Kent. At one house in Southborough, they found surveillance footage of Dixon's home, weapons, and detailed plans of the depot. The evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't street crime. This was military-level coordination. On March 2nd, police raided a shipping container in Welling. Inside, they found nearly £10 million in cash. Days later, another £8.6 million was discovered in a lock-up garage in Southborough, stuffed into laundry bags and suitcases. By early March, 14 people had been arrested. But two key suspects were missing: Lee Murray and Paul Allen. Lee Murray was a former MMA fighter, a cage fighter, a feared criminal, and police believed he was the mastermind. 4 days after the heist, Murray and Allen had fled the UK. They traveled to Amsterdam, then to Morocco, where they spent money extravagantly on houses, jewelry, and narcotics. In June 2007, the trial began at the Old Bailey in London. 8 people were charged, including the inside man, Emir Heisenaj, a worker at the depot who had filmed security measures with a hidden camera and passed the information to the gang.
You kidnapped and held a family at gunpoint under the threat of lethal violence in order to get access to that depot.
The prosecution revealed how the gang had planned every detail. They had bought spy cameras. They had practiced impersonating police officers. They had studied Dixon's routine for months. One woman, who had made prosthetic disguises for the gang, turned Queen's evidence in return for her charges being dropped. In January 2008, 5 men were convicted: Yetmir Buchpapa, Roger Coutts, Emir Heisenaj, Stuart Royal, and Lee Russia. 4 received life sentences. Heisenaj received 20 years. Meanwhile, in Morocco, Lee Murray fought extradition to the UK. He had Moroccan nationality, and Morocco does not extradite its own citizens. But Morocco agreed to try him under their own laws. In June 2010, Murray was convicted in a Moroccan court and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Paul Allen was extradited back to the UK. In 2009, he pleaded guilty and received 18 years in prison. Police believed Murray was stopwatch, the man caught on CCTV directing the robbers to move quickly. He was the leader, the one who controlled everything. By 2016, £21 million had been recovered, but £32 million remained missing. Police believed the cash had been quickly absorbed into organized crime networks. Some suspects escaped capture and were believed to be living off the proceeds in the West Indies and northern Cyprus. Farmers near the depot reported harassment from criminals convinced that some of the money was buried on their land. In 2019, Paul Allen was shot and severely injured at his home in North London. He survived, but was left paralyzed and wheelchair-bound. 3 men were later convicted of conspiracy to murder in connection with the attack. Lee Murray remains in prison in Morocco to this day. So that's the complete story of the Securitas heist. From the kidnapping to the robbery to the investigation and the trials. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.